Well, what is going on, everybody? Dan's Midwest Angling here, and today we've got a emergency from the truck special edition. Now, this is going to be a pretty controversial subject, and the opinions that I'm going to express are probably pretty unpopular with a lot of people. So, just so you know, I'm just going to prove that I am, in fact, stationary. I am not driving. So, any of the various troublemakers that might be looking to do some cowardly things, just know that, well, don't even try it. So, I was woken up this morning at my normal time, and I happened to see a post on social media. And a good friend of mine, he had shared a post about proposed rulemaking in the state of Wisconsin, which is the state that I live in. Now, every year, the DNR for Wisconsin, anytime they're going to propose changes to the rules, they usually put out a bunch of, it's a questionnaire. And then they have these things called spring meetings where you can either go to in person. They also have an online comment form, and they kind of get the public opinion. One of the things on the questionnaire for this year is BAN Livescope. That's right. And at first I thought this had to be a joke, right? There's no way that we would actually be that stupid. And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, you can find the link in the description of this video where it's the official Wisconsin site. You can download the questionnaire, scroll all the way down to question 22, and it reads, ban live scopes and 360-degree imaging locations in Wisconsin waters. With the ability of these types of units to detect fish as far as 180 feet from the user, anglers have become more efficient at locating and catching fish. This type of pressure could result in reduced fish populations, which may lead to reducing bag limits for anglers. Now, first of all, let's discuss the fact that 360 imaging is not the same as forward-facing sonar or live imaging. So whoever wrote this, they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Second of all, it says it right in the question. Would you rather ban a piece of technology that the majority of anglers don't even have, or lower bag limits, something that would actually affect each individual fishery and actually have a benefit to it? Now, I also need to start out by saying that I don't actually own Livescope. I would like to someday, but in 2022, I bought a brand new boat and I put a $10,000 crate engine in this thing. So I'm kind of on probation with spending thousands of dollars on fishing gear for a while. But there tends to typically be in the Livescope debate two different camps. And one could best describe them as the haves and the have-nots. The haves are people that have either bought the technology and learned how to use it, or they're somebody who knows somebody that does, and therefore they've actually been able to see how it works up close and are in favor of its use. The have-nots are typically people who either they can't afford it, or they don't even understand how it works, and therefore it's become this boogeyman to them, something that they don't understand, and they think that it's in competition and somehow going to be a detriment to them. Now, a common theme that I've seen with people that are against Livescope tends to be that it's uninspirational and it's boring to watch. And a lot of that comes up with Bassmaster Live, where they actually live stream the leaders during each tournament through the day. And the thing that people like to complain about is the fact that a lot of these pros, what they're doing is they're using the technology to scan brush piles, trees, docks, any bit of structure, and then they could see if there's no fish there, then they're not going to bother wasting their time even casting at it. And so to put this simply, these people are complaining because they are not watching somebody not catch fish. And so if that's the case, just let me know, because as somebody that has to spend hours reviewing footage of themselves not catching any fish, I could tell you that's boring as hell. When I'm reviewing film, I have to go through all the time where I didn't catch a fish. And there's nothing exciting about it. If that's really so inspirational to you to watch somebody cast, let me know. I will put hours and hours and hours of myself casting at fish that aren't there for your viewing pleasure. But beyond that, this has actually come up in the past with things like the Professional Musky Tour banning Livescope in their tournaments. And the thing with tournaments, though, is that tournaments are typically private organizations. And so you're usually paying an entry fee to get in, right? It's not truly a public event. So in order to enter said tournament, if you want to have your regulations, your rules for your specific tournament, that's one thing. But now with these have-nots actually pushing this stuff on a legislative level, it's not just people complaining on Facebook anymore. Like, they're full-on going on the assault to try and get something that they truly don't even understand banned. And to that, I just want to say, stay in your lane! Now, there's a couple of pros that have come out against forward-facing sonar. I think the vast majority are in favor of it, but there's a couple guys that are against it, and they typically tend to be the guys that are behind when it comes to technology. One of which, his name is Randy Blowcat, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce. I didn't even know about the guy until I actually made my own video discussing the Musky Tour banning Livescope, and that video kept getting recommended on his channel, and that was when I learned about him. But I'd also like to point out that Randy is, in fact, a professional angler, so it is true. He is 1,000 times better of a fisherman than I am. But just like he is entitled to his opinion on Livescope, I am entitled to my opinion that his opinion is full of shit, regardless of how terrible the fishing videos I make and put on YouTube are. But in the meantime, he's kind of been made famous as being the most vocal of all the pros to come out against this technology. And I don't know much about the guy. I don't even know what tour he fishes for. And you know what? I really don't even have anything against the guy personally. The thing that I take issue with is that he likes to spread a lot of misinformation about this technology to the people that don't understand it. And therefore, it's just kind of the snowball effect. It's guys like Randy that are riling up the masses that gets things like this proposed legislation to even be a thing in the first place. That's why I'm proposing that we coin the term that anybody that's against Livescope, you know, there's a thing called a Karen. Everybody knows what a Karen is. Well, the Karen for Livescope is you're going to be a Randy, and that's how I'm going to refer to you from now on. You are a Randy. And I mean, if you really want to argue about the technology and its role that it's played in fisheries, I would argue that there are other pieces of technology that have had a much more significant impact that just about everybody has on their boats at this point in time. Think about 20 years ago. Most people did not have any form of GPS on their boat. If they had a fish finder at all, it was typically a little grayscale unit with like maybe a 4-inch screen that just told them the depth. And then, you know, if you had the gimmicky little fish finder icon on there, then it would lie and tell you that a floating branch was a fish. But back then, if you wanted to remember where a specific spot was, you had to use that depth to figure out exactly what depth of water you were in. And then you'd have to use something like a paper map and landmarks to kind of triangulate your position. The thing now with modern GPS mapping, there's no secret spots on the lakes anymore, boys. That place that your grandfather had to work for 20 years of maybe he'd catch fish, maybe he wouldn't, to figure out exactly where that rock or that hump or that brush pile was. Well, the thing is now is we can figure that out rather quickly. I mean, just think about it. When was the last time that you drove down the lake and you saw a bunch of boats sitting on the same spot? You probably looked down at your GPS map and you're like, oh, well, they're sitting on that weed edge. They're sitting on that tree field, you know? And I would argue that that technology alone has, as affordable as it is, I mean, most fish finders just come with it on it now to begin with. Cheap fish finders. That technology has leveled the playing field a lot more than any other, in my opinion. Not nearly as many people are actually using Livescope as people would like to make you think that they are. And just like other technology when it came out, Livescope is the favorite boogeyman for a problem that's been plaguing our fisheries for decades. I mean, I'm definitely not old enough to remember it in my lifetime, but I know I've heard stories of when flashers really started becoming common a couple decades ago in the ice fishing community. This idea of being able to see the fish come up and eat your bait. Oh, that's voodoo, that's cheating. You know, that's not even sporting anymore. And I think that realistically, things like forward-facing sonar, they just have to go through the paces. They need to get less expensive so that more people get access to them. And then when more people get access to them, it doesn't become this big bad boogeyman. And this morning when I made a post sharing this information with all the various Facebook groups for the lake that I like to fish, I got quite a few comments on both sides, and a lot of them tended to be about the same, saying about the same things. But of all those comments, there was only one guy that actually had a comment that against Livescope that I could actually kind of agree with. And he was referring to Al Linder talking about on a podcast. He mentioned that they are already seeing musky populations decline in certain bodies of water because they have no place to hide anymore, and I'm sure certain species will take a hit. And I actually kind of agree with that. Something like a musky, you know, muskies don't reproduce that much. It takes a long time to grow that fish to the size that it is. And then a lot of times, like, the bigger fish are much more susceptible to delayed mortality due to stress. And I guess I could kind of see where, you know, that might actually have an impact on musky fishing. But here's the thing with that. The vast majority of people that fish don't fish for muskies. That's a real kind of niche community of fishing. So I really don't think that banning the technology statewide across all bodies of water for all species of fish just to protect that one that actually might be vulnerable to being exploited by it is the thing that needs to happen. And that's beside the point that people just generally don't eat muskies. They're a trophy fish. The other species that we are really concerned about protecting, a lot of them are food-related fish. I mean, yeah, it's fun to catch a boatload of crappies or yellow perch, but most people are catching these fish in order to eat them. And so, in my opinion, it's a much better strategy to actually reduce the bag limits. I mean, that legislation would actually have an impact in reducing the number of fish that's taken and thus ensuring that more of them live to reproduce the following year. It's also another case for using slot measurements. On the Wisconsin River, walleyes have a slot that you can only keep them between 15 and 20 inches, and you keep one that's over 28. This philosophy keeps the best breeding fish in the river to reproduce for next year. And anybody that fishes the Petenwell flowage system will tell you that it's doing great, and a lot of this has to do with that slot limit. There's already a lot of buzz in the Wisconsin angling community about the panfish limits, which currently statewide sit at 25 fish. And here's the thing that absolutely drives me nuts, is that people say that, oh, well, I can't catch them like I used to. Okay, well, back in 1972, you all kept bucket loads of fish every single time you went out. And ever since then, you've been doing the same thing. You keep your limit every time you go, over and over and over again. And now it's like, well, I can't catch them anymore. I wonder why. And then you got the opinion like this. I think they should ban them. When or where do we draw the line on what we use to fish? In my opinion, these live scopes have led to a significant depletion of fish. It might not affect us right now, but our kids will pay the price for our actions. We are paying the price right now for decades upon decades of way too high bag limits, leading to the depletion of these fisheries. And then you think about it. These people that want to be able to keep their bucket of fish, their limit every single time they go, they're not any better than anybody that uses Livescope and catches a limit. They're still doing the same amount of damage to the fishery when they keep their limit every single time they go, regardless of the technology that they used. And the thing too is that the people that say this, they don't actually care about the fishery, because when you confront them with this, they say things like this. I think they should get rid of them for the same reason you can't hunt deer out of an airplane. Fishing was never meant to be a rich people thing, and I don't want to contend with reduced bag limits because of a few guys with expensive gear ruining the fun.
I ain't got a good brain.
The fishing is only meant for the poors. But the point is that these people, they don't want to lose their high bag limits, because in theory, they think that they are such a hammer that they can go out and catch them every time. And now you're actually talking about doing something that would affect them. That's why they point the finger at Livescope, because it's an easy boogeyman. Yeah, and if you are of that opinion, you're just a clown. You're definitely not a sportsman. You just proved it. You don't actually care about the fishery itself. They have this weird sort of superiority complex because they don't own one. And I don't know if that's sort of like a justification in their mind. They're trying really hard to convince themselves, like, because they either can't afford it or don't understand it. Like, oh, you don't need that stuff anyway. And then you get comments like this. Are you all such poor fishermen that you need these? For the price, you could buy all the fish you need. Us older guys never used to use any devices. If using a regular fish finder is not good enough, you need to work on your abilities. Okay, first of all, you just said that you don't need a device. You didn't need it back in the day in 1972 when you all kept buckets full of fish. But then you say using a regular fish finder is okay. So is it you personally that gets to set the bar of where technology is? Like, what size outboard do you have? Back in my day, Great-Grampy only had a 5 horsepower to get to his spot on the lake. The point is, we've come a long way in this industry, and it continues to grow every day. You can't just pick a single point on the timeline of fishing and say, this is enough. This is where we draw the line. Like, I mean, that's basically the mentality of being Amish, right? Although, from what I understand, the Amish people that have seen Livescope in action think that it is the coolest thing they've ever seen. And it all goes back to these people just won't point the finger at themselves. So the core problem with the Randys of the world, the guys that are against Livescope, is that it is purely a position of hypocrisy. They're either doing the actual damage to the fisheries themselves, they are using technology that is just as instrumental in leveling the playing field, or they're just ignorant. And if you're one of the ones that's actually not ignorant and you are on the side of allowing advancements in technology like Livescope, the evolution of fishing, the in-person meetings will be held April 8th at 6 p.m., county by county. And if you are not able to make this, like in the case of me, that's a truck driver and I'm never around during the week, there will be an online comment period starting at noon on April 10th and running till noon on April 13th. As I said before, you can find a link to the questionnaire down below in the description box. And guys, you really need to make your voice heard. Because before, the Randys were just confined to being keyboard warriors. But now they're actually taking the fight to a level where we need to go on the offensive. Because when it all comes down to brass tacks, there are a lot more Randys than there are sensibly thinking people. So every single voice needs to be heard in preventing this overreach from taking place. Rather than banning the Livescope, why don't we do the much more effective thing of lowering the bag limits so that an angler can't do as much damage to the fishery no matter what technology they use. And if you actually care about the fishery, if you actually care about the fish themselves and their populations, you would support lower bag limits. And if you're not in Wisconsin, I hate to break it to you, but this is a bad precedent to be setting. The Randys of your state could be seeing this take place, and it could be giving them the inspiration to take action as well. So make sure that you are watching your warden service, your DNR, whatever agency is responsible for conservation in your state, your Canadian province. You make sure that you are watching this stuff and being vigilant. We all thought that, stuff like this wouldn't happen, but it does happen. Places around the world, people are losing fishing rights all the time. There's parts of Australia, there's whole bodies of water that it's not even legal to fish there anymore. And the less sensibly thinking people that we have with a voice in this country, the more likely that these things will come to us. So do me a favor, let me know what you think in the comments below. I am going to remind everybody, no matter what side they're on, to keep it nice, because if people aren't being nice, then I'm going to have to delete the comment. And if too many people aren't being nice, I'm just going to have to turn it off altogether. So don't make me do that. And if you like what I had to say, you want to keep up with my terrible fishing adventures, you can push this button to subscribe. And if you want to see just what kind of terrible fishing adventures I can come up with, you can watch this video. This has been Dan's Midwest Angling. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.